Hey guys, Raymond here from the Beginner Photography Podcast, and today we are talking about my biggest podcast takeaways from 2017. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast with Raymond Hatfield, the podcast dedicated to interviewing world-class photographers to ask them the questions you want answered. Whether you want to be the world's best wedding photographer, family photographer, pet photographer, or you just want to take better photos of your kids growing up, we will get you to start taking better photos today. Here with you as always, husband, father, home brewer, LA Dodger fan, and award-winning Indianapolis wedding photographer, Raymond Hatfield.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Man, it is good to be here. It's good to be talking to somebody. As somebody who works from home, and now it's winter and it's cold, it's great to be in the company of others. So thank you for spending this time with me right now. I truly appreciate it. I am Raymond, as always, your host of the Beginner Photography Podcast. And today, like I mentioned there in the intro, we got a great... Well, I don't know if it's going to be a great episode because I haven't said anything yet, but I'm really excited to get into this one as it's taken an entire year to create. And what I mean by that is that this podcast has been going on for more than a year. I think 2 years. It'll be 2 years, middle of January. And I've learned so much, not only about photography. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about you. I've learned a lot of different perspectives. And I think that is so important because that is exactly why I started the podcast. It's exactly what I wanted to get out of this the most by talking to other guests. You know, in the beginning, maybe we talked a little bit too much about gear, but it doesn't matter. Like, the gear doesn't matter. So I changed the types of questions that I've asked. I did a lot of YouTubing on how to become a better interviewer, and from all of your feedback, it's hoping, at least I hope, that it's paying off and that you're enjoying the podcast. So this episode is going to be a list of things that I've taken away from some of the guests this year, and that I hope that you can... that you have picked up on, or that you will enjoy to hear again. So, first, I would not be doing this podcast without you. It is not without all of your support that this podcast doesn't even pay for itself. This is mainly just a passion project. I do this out of my own time, away from my family. So the fact that you are willing to listen to me and give me the attention to learn about photography, it really humbles me. It really makes me appreciative of your time. So I want to highlight a review that we got this week from our very own listener from iTunes. That's Prodigy 2007. And I know Prodigy 2007 because he is in the Facebook group, the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group. It's Michael. And in fact, I pulled up his Instagram right here in front of me. And just in case you're not in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group, and you don't know who Michael is, let me just give you a quick rundown from his Instagram bio. He is a father. He is a martial artist, an explorer, a photographer, a scuba diver, a biker, a skydiver, a snowboarder, a surfer, a Part 107 pilot. That means that he flies drones, and he's a good pilot too. He's a hunter, and he's a legend. Man, I don't know how many legends we have listening to the podcast, but I can honestly say that we now have one. So Michael, thank you so much for the review that you left in iTunes, man. It's really helpful, and I truly appreciate it. All of the kind words that you put in there. It really helps. Each and every review really helps the podcast get found by I don't want to say bigger guests, because I feel like we've had a lot of great guests on here, but it just brings more attention to the Beginner Photography Podcast. And when that happens, it's easier to get bigger guests who can share the same wealth of information that hopefully you've grown to love from this podcast. So again, Michael, man, thank you so much for the review. So we're going to go ahead and get on into today's episode right now. I'm just gonna get right on into it. So like I mentioned earlier, I've learned a lot this year from talking with previous guests and the great photographers who we've had on the podcast. So, some of the takeaways are things that I know. These are things that I've come to know just through my experience, but I feel like I'm going to add them in there because as a beginner, they're really important. So the first one, and I think that this is arguably one of the most important for a beginner to hear, just like yourself, is that there is space for all of us. Okay? When you're first getting started in photography and you're thinking, hey, maybe I'm pretty good at this thing, you feel like everybody calls himself a photographer. You feel like, quote unquote, your market is saturated and that it's impossible to get any work. If you're really looking to take your photography business, I take that back. If you're really looking to turn photography into a business, that feeling of oversaturation can be really discouraging. But like I said, one thing that I've learned from this podcast is that there's room for all of us. And it doesn't matter when you start photography, right? It's not like, oh, well, this guy's been doing it for 30 years, so of course he has success. Like, he's been doing it for so long. It's not like, oh, they just have it ingrained in who they are. They were born with a camera in their hand, or whatever other cliches your About Me page on your website might say. But if you just go back and listen to some of the guests, we've had photographers who have been shooting, like I just mentioned, their entire life, right? And it was a natural progression for them to turn their photography into a business or a lucrative hobby. And they're really good at their craft. Like, they take it seriously and they try their hardest to be good photographers. And yet there are some who got into photography, that is, after a successful career. I mean, if you just go back to interview 69 with Ana Brandts, holy cow. I mean, she went to school like forever before she got a real career for a long time, until one day she was just fed up. She gave up, and then she started to pursue photography full time. And she made it work, because I'm not saying that, you can just get into it whenever you want. But I mean, you can. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that Anna had hustle. Like, she really wanted it badly. And therefore, it was a whole lot easier for her to make, some sacrifices to get to that point. But, I mean, she didn't go to school for it. She now educates other photographers on becoming great newborn photographers. And like I said, she had a career before she got into photography. So if you're feeling discouraged, maybe I'm too old for this, or whatever, that's baloney. Don't think that. And our guests have proved that, living proof. So keep at it. If it's what you really enjoy, keep at it. Okay, my number 2 takeaway that I've learned from our guests is that photography is not all about the money. It's easy when you first pick up a camera, right? Okay, so let's just run the scenario through the head. You get a camera, let's say at your local big box store. It's $700. Okay, entry level camera maybe it even comes with 2 lenses. Who knows? You might even get a flash with it, right? $700. You buy it used, it's even cheaper. Okay, you go out there, you start taking pictures. People start noticing. They're like, "Wow, man, you take really good pictures. I like them a lot. Like, do you do engagements? Do you do family photos? Do you do weddings?" And like, these questions just kind of start coming up. Maybe not often, but they do come up every once in a while. And you think to yourself, like, man, off of a $700 camera, people now want to pay me money. And if I book a wedding, I might get $1,000 out of this. Wow, like, I can keep going. Like, yeah, of course I'm going to shoot weddings. Like, that makes the most sense. Suddenly, after just one gig, I'm cash flow positive. This is perfect. But that's a terrible mindset to have, because I feel like money should be the result of your efforts and not the goal of your photography. So you should, if you have a true appreciation for photography and the time that you spend photographing things, and the time that you spend I mean, basically photographing things. I was going to say with people, but you might be a landscape photographer, a nature photographer. But if you truly enjoy what it is that you're doing and you get really good at it, your efforts should be rewarded by the money. It should never be it should never be the lighthouse off in the distance, right? It's never, I could make, X amount of money shooting weddings. I'm definitely going to go that route. When you hate, being in large crowds, when you hate, or when you'd rather just be out on your own, enjoying nature, taking a few photos of streams and beautiful landscapes, or if you just like hanging out with families and interacting with children, weddings isn't going to be the way to go. But because per gig it seems like it's more money, that's where you go. And don't do that. Do not do that. Most recently, we had Ben Hartley on the podcast, and that was in episode 77. And basically what he said is that he's not saying that good money can't be made. But if you go into it thinking money first, then you're just simply going to fail. So just enjoy the photography. Worry about the money afterwards. And I know that sounds like, oh, okay, it's easy for you, like you're a full-time photographer. And yeah, I am. But there was a lot of years where I wasn't a full-time photographer, and I was shooting anything and everything that came my way to make money. And while I still think that shooting anything and everything is a good idea, don't do it just because there's money attached to it. Go into it trying to learn something new out of that session. Use it to your own advantage. There you go. Okay, next thing that I learned, one of my biggest takeaways came from interview number 65 with Mark Silber. And Mark Silber, man, what a guest that dude was. He has been in it for so long. I think since the 60s, he went to college for photography, got out of it for a long period of time, had his own consulting firm, I believe it was, before he got back into photography. It was just a passion for him his entire life. It was always in the back burner. And he always slowly worked towards getting better and better and better until one day he just said, screw this job, I'm going full time and I'm going to pursue photography. But he didn't just jump into it, right? He had the experience and he had so much to share about having a game plan. And that was so important because specifically, he talks about the power of visualization. So what that means in this context is see the picture in your head before you take it. And I know that when you're looking through the viewfinder, you're like, okay, yeah, this is what it's going to look like. But at that point, it's already too late. Now you're just reacting to what's in front of you. Before you show up, before you snap a photo, before you even put your eye to the eyepiece of your camera, think about it. Look at your subject. You already know that you're going to be photographing something. So in this case, we'll say, landscape, okay? We'll say beautiful bushes or, I don't know, moss in front of a tree, okay? Think about that moss. Think about what it is that you want to see. How much of the moss you want to take up in the frame. Think of the camera angle, right? Do you want to be looking straight down? Do you want to be on the ground looking straight at it? How close do you want to be to this moss? How much of the frame do you want it to take up? Think about those things. Think about it, right? Because you can move your camera in any direction that you want to make your subject seem bigger, smaller. Then you can work on your aperture, right? How much do you want to be in focus? Maybe there's a stream in the background. Then you can play with your shutter speed. Do you want nice glassy looking water coming down that stream, or do you want it nice and rigid to show like the water droplets splashing up at you? All of these things can be changed. You have to imagine the photo before you take it. And that will make you not only a better photographer, you'll definitely become more competent, but you're going to be able to get work that you're truly proud of. Because suddenly it wasn't just like, oh, hey, look at this great shot that I snapped. Look at this great shot that I just so happened to get while I was out. It's, look at this photo that I worked hard for. That's huge. That's huge. Okay. Takeaway number 4 came from interview number 62 with Tyler Jackson. And that dude, I didn't know what I was getting into until I started talking to Tyler Jackson. And my takeaway from his episode was to think outside the box, right? Because I believe his interview was, I think I called it something like How to Travel the World for Free with Your Photography. And it seemed like a very clickbait title, but that's exactly what he was talking about, right? In it, he talks about how he thought outside the box to get something that he wanted. Instead of traveling to these places, taking photos, and then hoping to get recognized, what he did was he reached out to these places, specifically hotels, and said, hey, I'll be traveling to you. How about you give me a free few nights in your hotel or your establishment, and I'll just take some great photos that you can use for your social media or whatever it is that you want to use. And people ate it up. And this dude became successful enough at doing that he now has a YouTube show called A Photographer in Antarctica, a photographer in Germany, a photographer in Tokyo, a photographer in Kenya, I believe it was. Everywhere. He became so successful at this that he now started a YouTube show where he travels around the world, right? And he does this on his own dime because he thought outside the box and he did something unique. People loved it. They gave him a shot, and now he's capitalizing on that, right? It's not luck, guys. It's not lucky that he now has this YouTube show where he does this. It's not lucky that he gets that. He worked hard to get there, and that was a product of the amount of work that he put in. So sometimes you just have to think outside the box in terms of what it is that you're going to do. That was huge. Okay. My next takeaway, number 5, came from interview number 60 with Brian Caparici. And Brian Caparici is a very accomplished photographer. And not only that, he's also an entrepreneur. And he hosts the Sprouting Photographer podcast, another very popular podcast that helps educate photographers who are looking to learn more about the business side of things. And it's a wonderful podcast. But when he came on and I interviewed him, he shared something that I think was extremely important that beginners seem to overlook. Maybe they don't overlook it. Okay, we'll get into it in a second. What he shared was that prints are not dead. Not Prince the singer. Prints, like printing. Printing your photos is not dead. Prints are not dead, okay? This is tough. But it's absolutely true. When you first start in photography, you want to get out there, and a lot of times you offer the world to your clients. You think, oh man, if I offer this, if I offer that, they're going to want to buy everything from me. And it turns out that your clients are just asking for the digital files, right? Because all that they want to do is share those photos on Facebook or email them to family and friends far away. They're not looking to get beautiful canvases or large artistic prints made of your work. So even to this day, for me, I don't sell a lot of prints, but I do sell prints, right? What I'm saying is that I can see how, as a new photographer, you would think, why am I putting all of this effort into making prints, selling prints, putting together, price lists for prints, trying to advertise prints when nobody wants them? When in reality, it's not that nobody wants them. It's just that when you're first starting out, typically your clientele doesn't value prints as much as the clientele that you will have 3 or 4 years from now. But you give up altogether. You give up on the prints. Screw it. Nobody likes them. We don't need them. We're going to focus our effort into other things, right? Slideshows or what have you. But what Brian shared is that there's a way to go about selling prints. In fact, I believe he shared that if you only sell prints, then that will... So, how did he say it? If you sell prints, right? So, and you don't sell digitals, you only sell prints, you can then give digitals with your prints. So if let's say a family comes in, right, and they just want the digital files, you can still say that you offer digital files, but the image that they want has to be purchased in a print first. So they come in, they say, hey, we really like this photo, we want this one printed. then they get the digital file for that one. And then you could do, and even Brooke Mendenhall, I believe, shared this as well, is that you can then increase the amount of digitals that you give by the amount of prints that they buy. So say that they buy, I don't know, 5 prints, they'll get an extra digital file of their choosing. If they buy 10 prints, maybe they'll get 3 extra digital files of their choosing. You can get people who want prints when you offer prints and you sell those prints. If you just have prints but you're not communicating the value effectively enough, then nobody's going to want to buy them. Once you communicate that value effectively enough, you're going to have much better luck. And then you can use selling digitals as an incentive for people to purchase prints from you. So that was huge. Like, it's not tricky at all, because as long as you let people know that that's what they're getting into before your session, then that's exactly what they're going to get into. And they know that full well. So, okay. Takeaway number 6, I believe it is. Okay. It takes more than a great photo. What is it? That didn't really roll off the tongue as well as I was hoping. To be successful, being successful takes more than being able to take a great photo. I guess that got the point over a little more effectively, but still worded strange. Anyway, back in episode 50, I had Vinny Puglisi, and back in episode 75, I had Brian Leahy, and both of these photographers are at the top of their game. Vinny Puglisi has shot every major sporting event, from the Final Four or the NBA Finals, rather, the Stanley Cup, the Super Bowl, the World Series. Unfortunately, the Dodgers weren't in the World Series. And what he shared was that, and same with Brian Leahy. Brian Leahy is at the top of his game as far as luxury destination wedding photographers go. I mean, like, this guy starts, I believe, at $8,000. Like, his prices start at $8,000. That's impressive, you know? And it's not that he's 3 or 4 times better than most people starting out. It's not that his photos are, 3 or 4 times better than most people who have been shooting for a few years. He said that it takes more than a great photo. Both of them said this. For both of them, they use networking. They attribute their success to networking, rather. So with both Vinny and Brian, Brian reached out to other vendors and tries to help them out in any way that he can, so that they remember who he is. And Vinny will reach out to literally anybody to be as nice as humanly possible. I mean, I still talk to this guy. He's super nice. Crazy, crazy nice. And he really wants to be your friend, and he really wants to provide more value than what he takes, right? So it takes more than a great photo. So if you feel sometimes like, I'm not really getting anywhere, but it makes sense because I'm not the world's best photographer, let me tell you, man, the world's best photographers out there, and they're probably not good at business, and they're probably struggling. They probably don't have a business going on right now. They probably think that they're the world's worst business person, and they are, and therefore they're not making any money. Okay? And I don't want to say that it's all about the business, but there's ways. It takes more than just a great photo, And then even back in interview number 59 with Kimberly Houston, she shares that your clients may not be connecting with you because of the words on your website. They might suck. They might love the photos, but the words on your website could absolutely suck. And I know what you're thinking. My work should speak for itself. And that is bull. It doesn't, right? People want a personality. Families want personality. Couples want personality. They don't want just beautiful pictures. They want to know that they're taken care of. And you can do that through the words on your website. So there you go. Okay, next takeaway is, and this is one that I just think is really important for beginners to hear, and that is that you don't need to go full-time. Wow, that felt good to say. I get messages and I get emails from beginners just like you who feel that there's a pressure because they get good feedback on their photos and that they enjoy photography that they have to become a full-time photographer. You know, and that's not the only way. First of all, you don't have to do that, right? I would ask yourself what your motivation is. If it's to make money, you're going to be better off just working at your day job, right? Photography is not as lucrative as some people think. What it provides, though, is time, which can be nice. But that time, then there's added stress of, insurance. And what am I going to do in the slow season? For me, most of my money comes in the first quarter of the year. The first quarter and the last quarter of the year. The middle of the year, I get almost nothing, right? So planning ahead is hugely important. I got off track there. Point is, you don't need to go full time in photography. And I'm talking specifically about James Wheeler back in interview number 58. Photography is an extremely profitable hobby for him. But he has a job that he likes. He has insurance. He has benefits that he likes. He has people at his job that he likes spending time with. And photography doesn't offer any of those things for him. So if you think, I really like photography, but I don't know if I'm a business person or I get really good dental from my job or whatever it is, don't feel like you're pressured to go full time in photography. Okay. Back in interview number 57, I had Heidi Thompson on, and she is the host of the Evolve Your Wedding Business podcast. And she also came out with a book called Clone Your Ideal Client, rather. Sorry about that, Heidi. And one thing that I took away from that is that not every client is an ideal client. Again, when you first start out, myself included, I would take any gig that paid money, and I worked with a lot. I took a lot of bad gigs. That's what I got to say. That's all I'm going to say. I took a lot of bad gigs, right? And I didn't understand the idea of an ideal client, right? I look at the big popular businesses that I spend money with. Coke, or I guess not Coke, like Coca-Cola or I really don't drink soda. So like Target or Apple or I drive a Honda. I drive a Volkswagen. I used to have it doesn't matter. You never see them like discriminating towards somebody else. You never see them not offering full service. So they have, we'll take Volkswagen for example. Volkswagen has cars that are relatively cheap, right? Entry level cars, no frills. That's it. And then they go all the way up to, $100,000 luxury cars, especially if you get into their like Audi brand. My point is that on the outside it looks like they will take anybody who has money, right? Same with Target or Walmart, wherever you go to shop. They will take anybody who has money. So why won't I? Obviously, I'm doing something wrong as a business person. I need to cater to every single person, and that is not true. Heidi shares that, especially as a photographer, it's kind of a bad business model where you're selling your time and your time is limited. There's only 24 hours in a day. You can't shoot 100 sessions at a time. You can only shoot one at a time. So inherently, you can only make so much money per year. Or you can only take so many gigs per year. And wouldn't you want those to be with people who you really like spending time with? People who you feel like you can connect with so that you can have a more fulfilling and enjoyable experience at your work? I mean, that's what life is about right there. And Heidi shared that, and it was extremely powerful. Extremely powerful. So think about that next time you get a bad feeling about somebody or what somebody wants from your photography. Because maybe it's not a style that you offer. So just think about that. Okay, next thing that I learned that I think is also going to be valuable for you, the beginner, is that location is not everything. And I learned this from Philip and Eileen Bloom back in interview number 67. They run, these two are the definition of successful photographers. They shoot dozens of weddings per year, hundreds of portrait sessions. They donate their time and their skills and their resources to bigger causes charities, and they live more than an hour outside of Atlanta in, I mean, from what it sounded like to them, by them, like rural sticks. But what they like, and they're not cheap photographers, because they've been doing this for a long time and they know what it is that they're doing. They get people who come to them, very predominant members of society in Atlanta who travel to them. And remember, time is extremely important. Extremely important. So if somebody takes the time to come to you, holy cow. That's huge, especially if they're then going to spend a good deal of money for your services. What you got to do is you got to figure out what your value, where your value comes from. How are you different than all of those other photographers in the bigger market? And why should somebody waste their time? I guess waste is the worst word there. Why would somebody spend more of their own precious time traveling to you than just picking somebody local? Figure that out. And I know that this can be hard. I know it can, and I don't have the answer for you, because it really depends on your personality. But the point is that it can be done. And once you figure that out, you're golden. Okay, man, we only got 2 more takeaways left. This is turning out better than I expected. I'm happy. I said earlier that we had a great podcast for you, and then I said, actually, I don't know, I haven't recorded this yet, but now I'm gonna confidently say that this one turned into a good podcast. And we still got 2 more left, so maybe I just jinxed myself. We'll see. Okay, the second to last takeaway that I got this year is from Timothy Faust, back in interview number 53, and he talks about why trust is so important in your photography. This kind of goes back to that the fact that the takeaway rather, that it takes more than a great photo, because it also takes trust. And trust is important for several reasons. Number one is that a family, couple, what have you, whatever it is that you photograph, they are going to be spending money on you, and you don't want them to regret that decision. So I believe, I don't know where this came from. I don't know where the stat came from, but some marketers figured out that immediately after buying any big decision, right? Car, home, whatever, big life-changing decision, good amount of money, buyers always have buyer's remorse. Every single time. It doesn't matter. And for me, as a wedding photographer, I get couples who can be very passionate. Like, we've seen your work and we love it. It is, we know that we want you to be our wedding photographer. And I'm like, yes, this is such an ego boost. This is great. Even them, and if they're still being 100% genuine with me, and they book me as their wedding photographer, I guarantee you that they will have buyer's remorse every single time. They will always wonder, I wonder if there was a better photographer out there. I wonder if there was a cheaper photographer out there. I wonder if there was X photographer out there that does X better than Raymond, or whatever it is. And you have to do everything that you can to minimize that buyer's remorse to as little as possible. And trust is one of the key components there. It is huge in minimizing buyer's remorse. One thing that I do to build trust is that after a couple books with me, I immediately send them an email that just says, "Welcome to the family," as the subject. And inside is a little like, "Congratulations, your date is officially on my calendar." That reassures them. I'm super excited to work with you guys, because hopefully they're excited to work with me too. And then I post a video. Like, I send them a video as well that says, "Hey guys, thank you so much for everything. I really can't wait to get to know you better over the next few years. Like, also, I'm going to be sending you some goodies in the mail." And whatever it is that you share with them, that's going to build trust, because the last thing that they want is radio silence. They just dropped several $1,000s with you and then they don't hear from you, right? That does not build trust. But with Timothy Faust, and he's actually in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group. So if you want to ask him any questions specifically, go ahead and head over to facebook.com and search for Beginner Photography Podcast up in the search bar, and you should be able to find it right away. But building trust for Tim is so important that he offers a 100% money back guarantee on weddings. Wow. If you shoot 20 weddings a year, that's 1/20th of your income. Think of that. That's like an entire paycheck for you, right? Like at a normal 9 to 5 job, 52 weeks a year, half of that, you take away one of those paychecks. Imagine if you had to work, like you worked for a full 2 weeks and you didn't get a paycheck. That's essentially what Tim is offering here. A 100% money back guarantee. And that is to build trust. If you read that, you'd be like, well, I was thinking between this photographer and this photographer, but this one offers a 100% money back guarantee because they're so confident in their work. We're going to go with him because that's trust. Okay, here we are. We're at the last takeaway for the year. Last takeaway. And that is that social media and Instagram and Facebook, they aren't everything. I get it. I feel like I've said that a lot during this episode. I get it, right? You go on Instagram and you see this 17-year-old kid with 40,000 Instagram followers and 7,000 likes per photo, and you're like, why? How? Why can't that be me? Like, I get it. I totally get it. I get a little jealous sometimes. I guess it's not jealous. It's just that I don't understand. I feel like there's some sort of trickery going on. But back in episode 47, right? That was actually the first interview of 2017. I had on a wedding photographer by the name of BJ Matthews. And he has over 24,000 followers on Instagram. And he shared that it's not everything. That he still gets sad. He still gets depressed sometimes. He still is a very emotional person. And the fact that he'll share something and it doesn't get X amount of likes kind of hurts. Kind of hurts more than, I guess, as much as you'd expect. Especially if it's a photo that you love. Right? So, forget all that. Forget social media. I'm not saying don't do it. If you want to do it, do it. But kind of like the whole money takeaway, the number of followers shouldn't be your goal. It should be the result of your work. If you post great content, people are going to see you. They're going to recognize you. They're going to want to see more of your work. They're going to want to follow you. If you just go after Instagram for the amount of attention that you can acquire, you're going to fail. And that's that. Ooh, I got kind of emotional there, man. This was a very big year for the podcast, and 2018 is sizing up to be even bigger. I'm so excited for you all to be joining me in 2018 to learn and to grow and to share your work. I can't wait. So that was my list of takeaways from the interviews that I did in 2017. I want you to go back and think about your favorite episode in 2017. What interview did you hear that you resonated with so much? Or you thought, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that? I am going to implement that. Or this person is absolutely correct. What was your takeaway? What was your one takeaway for 2017 that is going to be that 1 degree shift in your mindset or your work or potentially your business that is really going to change everything? That's all that I got for today. This is... Wait, no, we got one more. We got one more episode of the year. Oh my gosh, it's coming to an end. Okay, all right, guys. I want you to share what that one big takeaway is. So go ahead and join the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group by just searching Facebook for Beginner Photography Podcast. Join the group. Join the other photographers who are learning, who are in their journey, who can help answer any questions that you might have or help with any problems that you might have. We're dealing with a problem right now of a family who's not happy with their photos of one of our members. And the way that it's being handled is with so much love and care and compassion in the group. It's not an ego thing. It's wonderful to see. And it's why I started the group. So if you want to join, facebook.com, just search for Beginner Photography Podcast and join the group. That's it, guys. Get out there, man. Have fun in photography. Enjoy yourself. Get out there, shoot, share, and be safe. Wow, I feel like the triple S's that kind of shoot, share, and be safe. All right, guys. I will see you next week. Later.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. Be sure to join the conversations on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want any links or resources we talked about in today's episode, check out the show notes at beginnerphotographypodcast.com. See you again next week.